Welcome to this RCSA webinar. My name is Francois Retif. I am a sustainability engineer with Sow and Reap Consulting and a volunteer with the RCSA, the Regenerative Collaborative South Africa today. I'll be hosting the webinar on transitioning to a circular economy in the built environment. So who are the Regenerative Collaborative of South Africa? The RCSA. The RCSA is a non-profit organization focused on transforming our built environment into a regenerative one. Many professionals are actively seeking change as part of the drive towards a net zero and ultimately a regenerative built environment. As the RCSA, we promote strategies and approaches that operationalize regenerative design and construction. We work collectively to inspire, educate, and create awareness amongst individuals in the industry. So really, the RCSA is striving to create a network and a knowledge sharing of regenerative approaches to design in our built environment. Okay, how do we do this? Many of you may be familiar with the webinars. These are monthly webinars and other educational events that showcase regenerative design and construction strategies, especially as they apply in practice and in the South African context. You can go back and look at all previous webinars from 2021 until current. You can find those on the YouTube channel, which is great, a recent launch. Please do check it out. Amazing topics, amazing webinars, just like the one we'll have today. Quick note in terms of our sponsor, the South African Institute for Draughting. So the South African Institute for Draughting has arranged for CPD validation of this and prior webinars. The Institute is an independent professional body which was established in 1953. It strives to serve its members, interacting with the role players and associated industries, being mindful and conscious of the necessary changes in the environment to fulfill its vision. So the South African Institute of Draughting is a professional body. If you would like to become a member, please check out their membership application form on their website. Okay, and then please do keep in touch if you want to find out about upcoming webinars and events as they are launched. Check us out on LinkedIn, Regenerative Collaborative. You can see in the chat box, Jennifer's posting links. Check out the YouTube channel and please subscribe on Eventbrite. That's probably the best way to get early notifications as soon as anything is scheduled or uploaded. You can take note of the email address there as well. As I said, a non-profit organization, a volunteer organization. So please get in touch if you'd like to get involved. And especially if you've got ideas for content or content that you'd like to bring forward, good case studies of regenerative design in the South African context. Okay, so today's webinar, transitioning to a circular economy in the built environment, a really exciting topic, a really important topic, and some well-known speakers to take us through it. First off, we got Jeremy Gibberd. Many of you may know Jeremy or know of Jeremy. He is one of the most influential voices, I would say, in the sustainable building movement in South Africa. Jeremy is a professional architect and chief researcher. He trained at University of Botswana, the University College London, and the University of Pretoria. At the CSIR, he has led a number of projects on education, architecture, and sustainable built environments. He has expertise and research interests in sustainability, sustainable built environments, education and community architecture, building performance, planning, and facilities management. He's carried out a wide range of projects and taught, published, and presented internationally in these areas. Welcome, Jeremy. And then second, we've got Karin Merle. Karin and Jeremy will be presenting on work they've done together. Karin is a circular economy and green investment expert with over 17 years of experience with international cooperation projects. She has previously been assigned by the African Development Bank to identify investment opportunities in the circular economy across Africa, and worked on an assignment for the SADC Secretariat to assist developing the regional circular economy strategy for the SADC region. Further, she and Jeremy together advise selected business membership organizations in the SADC region in the built environment, notably Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Namibia, on why circular business practices can be beneficial. A wealth of knowledge here today. And at this point, we're going to hand over to Jeremy and Karin, who can introduce themselves and get the presentation going.
Thank you, Francois.
While we wait for the presentation to come up, Karin, I'm interested, where did a life in the circular economy start for you?
Oh, that's a good question. It started when I was a kid, actually. I was always interested in nature and in doing better. My father showed me how to collect aluminum and where to bring it to, not to have it in the mixed waste stream, for example, or also other materials. So really, I feel in my childhood, it started this interest to see materials as materials and not so much as waste. But of course, we need to not to mix it, so it's not waste. Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you, everyone, for having me, for the opportunity to be with you today. And yeah, I think I was already introduced quite a lot. At the moment, I can add, and at the moment, I'm supporting the Georgian government with a waste prevention program. And in this program, also construction and demolition waste is one of the priority waste streams as well. Yeah, we're gonna go through a presentation together, Jeremy and I, that will present how can we transition to a circular economy in the built environment. And really, the structure that we're going to follow is, first, what is the circular economy? We're going to look at principles and also how businesses can actually benefit from these principles. We're going to go through specific examples for different strategies that incorporate circularity in the built environment. And as a third part, we also bridge to how to integrate circularity in the architectural practice. We will now dive into the basics of what are the principles of a circular economy and how can it benefit businesses. Here on the left-hand side, you can see a simplified version of a value chain ranging from the extraction on the top, extraction of mostly virgin materials, and going all the way down to the landfill. And our normal way of doing business is just that. The latest circularity report stated that the world is about 7% circular on average. So that means, in fact, the world follows about 93% the usual extract, make, use, discard model, which we call a linear economy. And in a circular economy, we introduce 3 principles. The first one is the elimination of waste and pollution by design. That means as a business, already when we design and thinking in the role of a government, when we inspire innovation and when we allow a product or business operation in the market, we should evaluate the product and business on the basis of how much waste will it create in how little time. So the second principle is the circulation of products and materials at their highest value. What it means is once we have released materials and substances or products to the market, we intend to keep those in the economy as long as possible and at their highest possible value. That means, again, like that if one user does not want to use a product anymore, but it's still in its full functionality, another user can continue using it, and for example, through donation or through resale. And only when a product is broken, or if a component is broken, we will repair it. Only when it cannot be repaired, we will remanufacture it. Only if it cannot be remanufactured, the product or the component would be dismantled and its materials or substances would be recycled, or in the case of nutrients, would be fed back to nature. And that's what you can see here on this illustration, like these cycles: repair, maintain, reuse, refurbish, and recycle. So the preference is really to stay in the inner loop first, to repair first and to maintain, and then to redistribute and refurbish, as well as to recycle later. So this is sometimes also called the inertia principle. We don't go to the next loop until the first loop cannot be pursued. So we're focusing on the inner loops first. The third principle is the regeneration of nature. So by extending product life, we need fewer virgin materials and at a lower frequency, which allows nature to take a break and to regenerate. Also, by generating less waste, we need less space for landfills, which will provide breathing space and habitat for biodiversity. And by actively seeking to circulate biological substances, to use less chemicals and to reuse nutrients that are in the systems, we change the quality of soils and overall allow nature to restore. As a matter of fact, the construction industry uses a large portion of natural resources, and the waste produced at construction and demolition sites accounts for 30% of total waste produced globally. An estimated 75% of the construction and demolition waste has a residual value, but it is not used nor recycled. And you can see on the right-hand side of this illustration that there are actually options to recover such materials, for example, as fertilizer additive, as gravel, or as road building or flooring materials. A study team looked into the case of the city of Vienna and found that would Vienna be reusing and recycling the construction mineral, that then the city could actually reduce its need to import by 32%. And for example, under the leadership of the Do Tank Circular City Vienna, that is a strategy for 2020 to 2030, Vienna decided to launch a first pilot project in an urban expansion. The elements that they utilize include landmass coordination with mobile machinery, and then also another one is planning and construction building with a higher circularity factor. In this pilot project, they aim to use recycled concrete and insulation material in new buildings. As the offer of secondary material is limited currently, it is important that the city acts as a promoter also of innovative solutions through the way it launches its calls and through the way it's setting a precedent through its own public project. So in the spring of 2020, Vienna started developing a tender for the new construction project. It included a list of criteria describing the perfect product. So they wanted to inspire the market to aim high, as the offer that came closest to the ideal would be selected. This pilot has inspired, meanwhile, another circularity pilot to implement circularity in elements in as many retrofitting actions as possible. And as an additional step, the city will organize citizens outreach events via a container pop-up office to make citizens more aware about the lessons learned and how important refurbishment is, and how important also using secondary materials is. So this shows how the city could influence the market towards more circular solutions in the construction sector. We also looked into the South African case and found this data set here, which indicates that the majority of the construction and demolition waste in South Africa are masonry and concrete, with 36% and 38% each. So there are 4 destinations where the construction and demolition waste ends up. that are landfill. So the majority of the waste is ending up there and it's saturating the capacity fast. Then there are opportunities of formal recycling, informal dumping, and informal reuse, whereas only a small fraction actually is reused or recycled. And then there are also some loops between these. At the landfills, this material will be used as cover material or would be downcycled. And a small portion will from there go into formal recycling and some informal reuse. Some of the construction and demolition waste, however, is also informally dumped and might be informally reused, but data on this is scarce. So overall estimates for the construction and demolition waste range between 5 to 8 million tons to between 14.3 to 32.5. So you see there is a large discrepancy as real data is not really readily available. What causes waste at South Africa's building sites? According to an article from the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, there are several reasons, and we summarize the most frequent ones. So, for example, procurement aspects. We have procured the wrong items. We have overstocked, we bought in bulk. Perhaps there was a mistake in the delivery. Or the second one, we have often a variation order. For example, the design had to be changed during construction stage, or the site conditions changed, the specification of the materials changed, the bill of quantities of work changed, or we're waiting for replacements. The materials did not meet the requirements and therefore had to be discarded, or had to be discarded earlier than assumed. We estimated inaccurately and therefore have an oversupply or wrong specifications, or the laborer or subcontractor that we use were not very skillful and therefore operated in a very wasteful manner, or supervision could have been poor, therefore the construction was done in a less efficient way. So materials are being discarded more than originally planned. Also, material or components could be contaminated, for example, with toxic materials or with paint or other contaminants. So we cannot use them anymore in the function in which they were meant to be used, or other reasons. And not to forget that every normal work process also has some losses because not everything runs perfectly. So yeah, we also provide you with a box on the right-hand side with the most mentioned materials when it comes to waste at construction sites. And this is in line with the earlier slide as well. Why does it matter to think about a circular practice? This slide provides you with the connection between the current inefficiencies of doing business and possible circular solutions that can tackle these. So on the left-hand side, you see the inefficiencies, and then on the right-hand side, you see the possible solutions. For example, we are facing the use of unsustainable materials. Material and energy cannot be continually regenerated, or products are not renewable or purely organic. And the solution to this is a circular supply chain. The design for backward compatibility of parts, or the design for repair and remanufacturing. We have underutilized capacities in our economy, or unused products or unused assets. So that means products are not operating full hours, or their full functionality is not useful. So for example, I have a fully functioning phone, but maybe I don't use the 5 cameras it brings, right? So this is meant with their full functionality is not useful, or not useful for everyone, for all the customers. Premature product lives. Products are not used to the fullest possible working life. For example, due to new models or features that would prohibit repair or maintenance. And a possibility to tackle this is the extension of product end of life. So that could include remanufacturing chains, retrofitting through modernization, through updates, through maintenance. And we also are facing a lot of wasted end-of-life value, valuable components or materials or products and energy are not recovered at disposal or end of first life phases. So what is a circular economy strategy to tackle this is the recovery and recycling, and also the design for such recycling, the design for dismantleability. And the last one is unexploited customer engagement. Organizations would focus perhaps on the sales of a product instead of solving the customer problem. An example could be selling a phone to a customer rather than providing a functioning communication service for a user, or selling a lamp to a customer rather than providing light into a user's home.
Okay, I think one of the really interesting things about the building and construction industry is that the structural waste. We're incredibly inefficient in many aspects. So if you look at construction, we waste 10 to 15%. So these figures are from Europe, but many aspects will be similar in South Africa. In fact, probably worse. So we lose 15% of our materials just during construction. If we look at operation, many offices are underutilized. In Europe, it's about 60%. And if you ask people about the places they live in, about 50% of them would say our house, our flat is too big. We've got too much space. Also, if we look at things like energy, typically we would use a figure of about 30% for looking at energy improvements in buildings without upgrading equipment. So again, a lot of inefficiencies just inherent in the way buildings are run. And then last of all, most of the waste goes directly into demolition. So we lose again 50%, of useful materials straight into landfill. So what I'm going to run through now is just opportunities, because many aspects of climate change are about the kind of negative aspects and kind of how do we deal with climate change, reducing carbon emissions, etc. The difference with the circular economy is it offers a huge number of opportunities. So to start off with, when we look at materials and where we get materials from, we are typically looking at bio-based renewable energy sources. So again, there's opportunities to supply new materials, different materials. We tend to aim to look at materials that can be manufactured from waste. So again, there's a whole set of opportunities for small enterprises in that area. How we manufacture materials. So industrial symbiosis, where you link a set of industries so that you use the waste from one industry as a useful input for another, so that you get a very efficient ecosystem of industries is another very interesting opportunity, and that's starting to be explored in South Africa and Namibia, etc. Karin mentioned product as a service. Again, we are going to give some examples later, so I won't talk about that too much, but it's about providing the service and allowing a supplier to maintain ownership of the equipment, and they then just charge you for the service, such as energy or such as light. Product life extension, so keeping materials and components in use longer, so there's less waste. And then lastly, redesigning products. So there's a whole range of new products coming through that are about rethinking the way we do materials, that are far more about bio-based, regenerative sources. So again, we'll show some of those a little bit later. So the other interesting aspect of the circular economy is it's very much about design. And that's why I think for architects, it's of particular interest. The first part is designing out the need for a new building or a new product. So that sounds a little bit contradictory because you do yourself out of a job. But actually, that's what's needed. Can you avoid major refurbishments? Can you avoid knocking down buildings, etc.? So designing out the need for change. The second one is looking at designing for longer life. So it's thinking through very clearly how you make sure that that building or that component lasts longer and is functional for much longer. And then the last one is designing better. So it's much better performance, much better quality, easy to maintain, higher performance in terms of energy, occupant comfort, etc. So it's very design focused. The other really interesting aspect, and again, it's about design, but it's about what designers do at the beginning of a design process. And if we think about what they're doing, is they're adding value to raw materials, they're adding value to a loose arrangement of products. So if they think through circular approaches, you add more value to a particular building or to a particular product. So that's the purple. And what you're trying to do as a designer is get that as high as possible. So you add a large amount of value to your building and product. The building is then used. So the life of the building might be 20, 50 years, etc. And towards the end of the life of that building, or towards the end of the life of the components within that building, you may then need to take components out or reuse or refurbish those components. So again, if you look at those green lines, what you're trying to do is to make sure that each component and material doesn't lose value. It's kept at the highest possible value and kept in use for as long as possible. So this is a very nice diagram. It's referred to as the kind of value hill. And architects have a very specific role in building that value hill and making sure that you don't lose value. There isn't value destruction in demolition or in poor usage by clients. So lastly, it's useful to think about the circular economy very widely because there are many benefits. It's more efficient, so it's cheaper. There are better public services, so parks. There's more money available for things like that if you spend less money on waste and landfill. Lower pollution and emissions because manufacturing is much cleaner, better ecosystems, better biodiversity. A very big one for South Africa is many more small enterprises and decent jobs. So this is happening in places like Finland, Denmark, the Netherlands. Basically, they're transforming the economy to a circular economy. And there's been a huge transformation in the number of jobs created. So in South Africa, there's a huge opportunity to tackle much of our unemployment and lack of small entrepreneurs. And then by having a very diversified small economy that's based on small entrepreneurs, you've got much more diversification. You've got much more robust, resilient local economy. So next, we're going to show some examples, and some we'll spend a little bit more time on, and others we'll do fairly quickly.
So yeah, what can we do if we are a business and we would like to become more circular? There are different starting points, and many of them can be combined with each other as well. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation has grouped these circular business strategies into 6 clusters. They call them regenerate, share, optimize, loop, virtualize, and exchange. And they call these together the Resolve framework. And we will go through what each of them represent and also some examples for each of them. Jeremy will take you through the first one.
So the very first one is about regeneration, and it's about regenerating natural capital. We rely on our natural systems for temperature control, for carbon sequestration, for stormwater management, etc. So part of what we're doing with this particular objective is looking at how we restore natural systems, but particularly vegetation, farming, sustainable farming systems. So putting back into the environment nutrients, vegetation, biodiversity. So the very first example is cross-laminated and glulam timber construction. Very interesting. This has started to take off in South Africa in a kind of fairly mainstream way. What this looks at is using timber really as a structural element, but also as a building element. and prefabricating a lot of the components, and these can then be assembled quite quickly on site. There's some quite interesting projects currently. There's quite a big tower block in Zanzibar being built. I've just adjudicated a student competition. A lot of them are now designing using timber. So I think really in the next 5 to 10 years, we probably will find a lot more timber projects. And the key knock-on effect from this is the need for sustainable timber and sustainable forestry. And we've got very good resources in South Africa for that. So we can regenerate a lot of land, a lot of farming for that. The next one is a project I did in Zambia, and it was for the ILO and UNEP. What was interesting here was that we looked at the current way a lot of new houses were being built, mainly built of imported material, a lot of it Chinese, some South African, and a lot of this material had a fairly short life and went into landfill afterwards. And instead of that, what we did was we looked at designing local houses. So the top picture is an example of one of the houses we built that has about 97% local content. So 97% of the value of that house is generated from local materials. So compressed earth blocks, locally made tiles, and a lot of timber. And really what we wanted to do here, and we demonstrated it, was that you could design very high quality houses and components that could then stimulate the local forestry industry, create a lot of jobs in forestry, but also in manufacturing, and reduce carbon emissions and landfill.
Great. Brings us to the next one, that is mycelium, which is a vegetative part of a fungus. So it can actually be used to build structures with agricultural fiber. So it has first been a material invented to replace wine packaging made from styrofoam. And then the inventor branched into other use cases for different sectors. So including the construction sector and interior design. So mycelium as a construction material offers great opportunities for upcycling agricultural waste into a low-cost, sustainable and biodegradable material alternative. Mycelium-based composites are novel, are affordable and environmentally friendly materials with great potential for application in the construction industry. These materials apply biofabrication of natural fungal growth with some cellulose byproducts to develop sustainable alternatives to traditional energy-intensive construction materials. So among their properties are compostability, rapid virtual growth into almost any given form. So you can just create a form and the fungus will build macrostructures with the agricultural fiber in this form. It provides acoustic and thermal isolation and is also self-binding. That means mycelium is not as strong as traditional bricks, but much lighter. Bricks have a compressive strength of 28 megapascal, more or less, and while the mushroom bricks could withstand 0.2 megapascal. But they are 60 times as light as the conventional brick, comparing 43 kilogram per square meter as opposed to 2,400 kilogram per square meter. So therefore, it makes much more sense to use mycelium as a construction material in non-load-bearing structures, like as an insulator or in interior walls. The global mycelium market is valued at an estimated value of $2.95 billion in 2021, and is expected to reach $5.5 billion by 2030. And currently, we have roughly a share of 25% for materials in the construction, packaging, and fashion industries, with a growing trend. Now let's look into the second strategy of sharing, which could maximize asset utilization by reusing assets or by pooling the usage of assets. So let's look into examples. Here we can see what we call an Uberization of equipment. This is an example of, it should be in Nigeria, I think. was Nigeria. The map shows Zimbabwe, but it should be Nigeria. The app actually provides a solution to pool vehicles like tractors for different farmers, and you can abstract this for any sector really. It could be also in the construction sector, that a platform is actually created for different users that don't use the same vehicle all the time. It would stand idle when it was not used. And through the application, it is actually possible to book the time that is convenient for each of the users and pay for just that use of this vehicle for this time. It can be also used, for example, for tools or other instruments. Advantages are that you can improve the efficiency by accessing the equipment that improves productivity and also cost effectiveness for the individual user. It reduces energy and carbon emissions and the cost associated with eventually duplicated or unproductive equipment. If all, let's say, farmers in this case would have to buy the same vehicle and it stands in front of their farm for most of the time, this is the energy and carbon emission and cost that will not produce in this case when they share the same vehicle. And its potential to create small enterprises and jobs that provide and service and maintain and also provide training for equipment.
The next example is to do with community education and training colleges. So community education and training colleges are for adult learners and also out of school youth. So basically you can use a community education college to catch up on courses that you might have missed. The interesting thing about this area is that they own very few buildings. The way they work is they use existing primary or secondary schools or TVET colleges to run their courses, and they might be in the afternoon or in the evenings or over weekends. It increases the efficiency of existing school infrastructure. And it's quite important for architects to understand how this works, because when you design a school, and I've designed a few of them, if you can make it very easy to run and use that school out of hours, so you design the whole kitchens, toilets, some of the shared facilities, sports grounds, for instance, computer lab, so that they can be used easily out of hours, you can hugely increase the efficiency of that building and create a lot of local impacts. So again, reduced energy, reduced carbon emissions, reduced need for new buildings.
Great, and then we sum up this section with the example of IKEA, the famous furniture manufacturer. A few years back, they started to make better use of the secondary furniture market. And now they offer rental, leasing, and also resale of your furniture. In the resale market, it now competes with platforms that had mushroom, like eBay, for example, and therefore increases also its power to set the price. And in its leasing offer, it provides a subscription-based service, and therefore the business model changes from a transfer of ownership to offering a product as a service against a regular fee. Jeremy had introduced that term as well, product as a service. Here you can see one that IKEA implements, and IKEA maintains the product ownership and ensures the maximum reuse before the components are being recycled. Next section is the optimize strategy. We can optimize the performance of a system and prolong an asset's lifetime. For example, by decreasing the use of resources, that means the classic efficiency gains, and by also implementing reverse logistics.
I think one of the good examples of this is the idea of a 15-minute city. So the 15-minute city really came in during COVID, and it's the idea that within 15 minutes you can access everything you need for daily life. You can go to work, your children can go to school, you can go to cafes, do your shopping, etc. And the efficiency of thinking through this at an urban design level makes a huge difference to congestion, to costs, carbon emissions, but also to quality of life. You get a huge improvement in quality of life. And a lot of the major cities globally, so the big example is Paris. They're putting in €1 billion per year really to transform Paris into a 15-minute city. There are similar examples globally, congestion charges in London, etc., to try and encourage the emphasis on local services and availability. So the next one is how you make buildings very easy to manage and maintain. A lot of you use planning grids. A lot of you use modular products. This is taking it really to the kind of next level where you record a lot of the components you use in buildings in material banks. You see them as high value items to be looked after and reused and maintained. You also design in a way you can access those materials and components very easily without damaging surrounding materials, so that you can repair that, replace that component if you need to. So there's a huge emphasis on detailed design, looking at the geometry of connections so you can remove components easily. Really the kind of thinking is that you build a building, but you make it also very easy to reverse and unbuild that building and disconnect and have bolted connections, for instance, rather than welded connections, etc. So this was a project that we entered in the World Circular Economy Forum, which is a prototype for housing in African cities. And the way we designed it was to have a very simple structural frame, could be concrete or timber, and then all of the components could be bio-based materials, very easy to adapt, install using local entrepreneurs, and then have easily maintained components. And on the roof, have renewable energy, vegetable gardens, and really stimulate local circular economy services, so that you worked as part of the neighborhood for things like food, work, material, etc. So quite an interesting project, very optimized.
The loop strategy comes back to the very core of the second circular economy principle. We keep the products and materials that we have already put into the market as long as possible in the economy at their highest value. So we do that in cycles of repair, retrofitting, recycling, following that hierarchy of repair first, then remanufacturing, then recycling. The recycling of concrete from demolition is a good example. The material can be utilized as aggregate for building products, such as bricks and blocks, as reinforced concrete or precast elements. Or other use cases include pavements or foundations and using the material in road construction. So this will not only be less costly, but also reduces the energy footprint and with it the carbon emissions and waste associated with the product. Yeah, concrete has usually a high energy footprint, which is why such an advantage counts a lot. And we also reduce the need for landfill capacity drastically and the cost and emissions spent when transporting the material to the site, to the landfill site. And moreover, such reuse has the potential to create new enterprises and new jobs, especially locally. What I've seen increasing is the reuse of plastic waste to manufacture all kinds of furniture and design components such as planks or outdoor furniture. Generally, a real low quality plastic can be even used for this process. For example, I call it contaminated plastics from marine litter. So it's not in a good shape anymore because it has been suffering from saltwater influence, but even that material can be used and turned into furniture or components. So the design nowadays imitates even wood quite well, especially if it includes real wood fiber. As with the earlier concrete reuse, we can decrease the need for landfilling, as well as the transporting, and also increase job opportunities. The process can serve as an interim technology, decreasing undesirable plastic material, for example, plastic from marine litter, and to bring these materials back to the market. The products are made for durability, even under extreme conditions, so outdoor conditions, and need a much lower level of maintenance. Examples in the industry are block solutions, which is based in Europe. And for example, in the Philippines, I visited a company that is called the Plastic Flamingo, and they were able to offer furniture for schools.
So another interesting example is cellulose loose fill insulation. So this is made typically from newspaper, but it can be made from different types of paper. And it's shredded into a very light consistency, and it makes very good insulation. So it can be blown into cavities, it can be blown into ceiling voids, and the equipment required is very simple. It's something that a small entrepreneur can very easily afford, and you can manufacture the material and install it. So it's highly suitable for small entrepreneurs. You take waste out of landfill, very low carbon emissions, and the possibility for creating lots of jobs, and obviously much more comfortable, energy efficient buildings.
Now, can we entirely get rid of material, or can we displace resource use with virtual use? Some industries have revolutionized. For example, we've seen the replacement of the music cassette by streaming services like Spotify, or video cassette replaced by streaming services like Netflix. Can we in the construction sector replace physical products and services with virtual services? Can we replace physical with virtual locations? And can we deliver services remotely? This will be part of this strategy, virtualized strategy. And especially during COVID, these applied measures did prove that we all were more digital than we thought we would be ever. And as a global community, we moved quite fast into using Zoom, Teams, Google Meets, and also the like. Yeah, that now allow for meetings as well as training to be held online. We can furthermore count on more online learning resources, including for architects and the wider built environment sector. This eliminates the need for travel and decreases the respective cost and time spent on traveling. At the same time, we enjoy reduced traffic congestion, less stress with parking, and less need for parking space. We can lower our transport-related carbon emissions. And other advantages include that these platforms, communication platforms, lower the barriers for new enterprises to enter the market. So therefore, particularly startups and small businesses gain through a virtualized strategy. For example, offering online training.
Okay, so this particular example is similar, and the way this works is it uses technology like cameras, scanners, etc., to record different aspects of a building or a building system, and it allows a lot of these inspections to be done remotely. So a good example is if there's a school in a remote location, you can ask someone to share a video of the particular repair or issue. But you can do the same for fire extinguishers, emergency egress. And what it allows is that it helps avoid the need to travel to those locations. Obviously, there's kind of liability issues, but the likelihood is that you can actually make buildings safer, and you can make sure they're maintained more easily. And obviously, you reduce travel, you reduce time and cost for improved maintenance and management of buildings.
Great. And we come to the last of 6 circular business strategies, exchange, which stands for the wise selection of resources and technology. So possible options are to replace with renewable energy and materials, to use alternative material inputs, to replace traditional solutions with advanced technology, and to replace product-centric delivery models with new service-centric ones.
So the obvious one is when you demolish a building is to make sure that a lot of the components are taken out carefully, and you can then contribute this to an exchange so someone else can then take that and use it in a new building. So you extend the life of a component or material. We're used to that here with the informal economy, but the interesting thing is this is quite widespread. So this particular picture is from San Francisco, where a lot of components are reused in a product exchange. So this is called urban ore, and it's a material and building component exchange in the center of San Francisco. So this is something that's happened really as a result of ESCOM's load shedding. What a lot of people have done is started looking at renewable energy systems. Obviously, it's a substantial capital cost. And what is starting to happen now is there are many new companies and banks and installers who will install a full system with batteries, PV panels, inverters, etc., at a very similar cost per kilowatt hour rate or at a monthly rental cost, and provide this really as energy as a service, or rather, or as a product as a service. So you as a building owner don't need to contribute that capital outlay. There's no capital outlay, but you get the full benefit of renewable energy, and all the maintenance is done by a company. So again, lots of opportunities for small enterprises, maintaining, installing this equipment, but also very rapid uptake of renewable energy systems, especially now with the 125% tax benefit that's associated with renewable energy.
And another example is Signify, the former Philips Lighting, which offers lighting as a service. Customers do not buy the lamp and electricity separately, but they pay their lighting solutions in a package per lux spend. This means that ownership of the good is not transferred to the customer again, but remains with Signify. And Signify charges its customers per light hour and not per bulb. And Signify has implemented this model at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. It is expected to cut the energy consumption by half. Now it's up to us, and particularly to you in the construction sector, to integrate circularity into practice. In this paradigm shift, architects have an important role to play, as Jeremy also mentioned previously. So you are at the cradle of design, you are the designer of the future built environment to create material inventory for the next 20 to 30 years. How can you assume your role as a designer for zero waste? What are circular designs for new buildings and for retrofitting that you can apply in Southern Africa and maybe beyond? We saw that there are opportunities to decrease the current inefficiencies. It will be essential that you familiarize yourself with these to be an early mover into the circular economy transition and to help translate the benefits to your clients when showing new designs to them. So these new designs would plan for repairability, for dismantleability. They would maximize the use of non-harmful materials, of renewable materials. Such designs would further incorporate renewable and second-hand building materials and components. And you, for example, through your construction industry associations, could advocate for desirable public services to no longer be demolition, but rather a careful deconstruction, which allows to extract the remaining values of components, products, and materials. The EU has been developing so-called circular procurement criteria from which others worldwide can learn. For example, in the Netherlands, specifications have incorporated the need to demonstrate the second life of a building material or second life of a building even, or a building or spaces, and the second life of furniture. So spaces and furniture are no longer procured in some cases, but rented for a specific time frame. And this will increase even more. It will also become increasingly important that you are aware of the material footprints of different alternatives and the sources of where to find additional funding to support such eco-innovation that you want to drive forward, for example, in the form of grants or of awards. I wish you curiosity and inspiration on your way.
Okay, so thanks, Karin. So just the last couple of things to say about how you integrate circularity into practice. We use plans of work, and the example I'm showing on the screen is from the RIBA, the Royal Institute of British Architects, and the certain things that we do at the different stages. So one of the important things with the circular economy is thinking about it strategically right at the beginning. So in your feasibility studies, in your discussions with the client, in your briefing, and then all the way through at the different stages, right through to operation, right through to demolition and refurbishment. And the interesting thing to look at is to look at how this transformation is happening in architectural professions elsewhere. So this RIBA plan of work from 2020 shows a much stronger emphasis in the early stages on strategic definition. And that's the point at which you can offer services linked to the circular economy that really think through how and what you're going to do as a client with your building to make sure that it's efficient, it's extremely low waste, and it's aligned with the circular economy. So lots of opportunities there to set targets and do studies that make sure that you develop a very high performance circular building or refurbish an existing building. The second part to that is there's a stage of work called manufacturing and construction. So again, very strong emphasis on getting involved in manufacturing and construction rather than just administrating a contract. Go and look at how components are made in factories, how they're prefabricated components, and look at waste and look at how people do things. So again, lots of opportunities around more circular products, more circular ways of doing things. And then the last thing, which is also very interesting, is there's an emphasis on use. So getting involved with operations, getting involved with your client and making sure that the systems you've designed into your building, so your components that you've designed for a very long life in terms of maintenance, are followed. Very efficient water systems, very efficient energy systems, etc. So many opportunities really to kind of rethink the way we do architecture. And one of the things I'm going to leave you with is really to think through your standard practice processes and start thinking about opportunities. And hopefully this presentation has been useful for that. So I think the last thing to say is here some contact details if you want to get hold of me or Karin. What I also want to do, I've just come from adjudicating a student city center sustainable housing competition, and it's going to be open tomorrow at the University of Pretoria from 4 o'clock at the architecture department. And if you drop me an email or a WhatsApp, I can organize access for that. It should be very interesting. There are about 68 quite interesting examples, some circular, some not so circular. So welcome to, if you're around Pretoria, please feel free to contact me. The last thing to say is I normally do posts of talks. So we'll put this up as a very short article with some of the links on a blog, jeremygibberd.com. So Karin and I will put that in.
Check it out. And we wish you really curiosity with exploring this topic that we presented today. Please get in touch if you have questions or comments.
Excellent. Thank you very much, guys. What an amazing framework to frame what is a really complex topic. You've done a really good job in framing it in a user-friendly and digestible format. So you're not quite off the hook yet. We'd love to engage with some questions at this point. So please do share your questions in the chat box or raise your hand. And we'll start maybe just with a question in from Amy Symington. Amy is referring to education and awareness, which is something that I noted as well. And she's asking, are there any good resources or groups in South Africa that discuss and grow awareness for the circular economy or circular built environment? Anything to share, Jeremy or Karin?
Yeah, I can start and then Karin can probably add. There's a number of resources. There's the African Circular Economy Network, ASEN, that is particularly interested in African examples. So it's not just the built environment, it's also got quite a lot of resources around food, textiles, etc. The CSR has released a couple of guides, again, local examples, and we're working on a couple of new ones that will come through. So again, what I normally do is share new resources that come through. The One Planet Network also has a few resources. I've contributed to a number of those, and I can put some of those links up on the blog article when I get to it. There are certainly a few around that are quite useful. Karin?
Yeah, just to add, also Metabolic, they have worked worldwide, but they've looked into construction industry as well. And Ellen MacArthur Foundation is a very good source to start with as well. They have repackaged whatever we know about circular economy models that have risen since the 60s, really, but they have repackaged it in a nice format. And yeah, we're curious to look into different sectors. So I encourage you to also check out their website.
Great. Thanks, guys. Another question in from Darisha Govender. Darisha says, very interesting talk. Thank you. Jeremy, how do you integrate this as a workflow in your practice? i.e., does maintenance of the material banks, keeping track of materials used in the design, happen within the architectural designer's space or scope? Would an in-house sustainability consultant be the best person to maintain and track this process? Yeah, I'd love to hear that, Jeremy, your experience.
Okay, I think there's a number of stages to it. That particular component is probably one of the kind of most advanced aspects in terms of where we need to take circular built environments. So it's not really well established locally. There's some very good examples internationally of how this works. And it's an incredibly detailed process, very labor intensive, interestingly enough, but also very productive. You can get to the point where you're recycling pretty much all of your building components if it's thought through well enough and you use the right tools and you do the audits and you use the databases, etc. So we are not anywhere near that level, and your big problem is going to be persuading your client to bear the additional cost. So one way of looking at it is to work with demolition contractors, work with developers to recover your fees in the value of maintained value materials and products. And that's, I think, the kind of first entry into it. So that's, sorry, a rather long answer, but basically I think that's where you start with in terms of the business model, and over time I think we'll find many more clients will be interested in this, particularly as you get more sophisticated components, double glazed, triple glazed units, quite expensive equipment, etc. There will be more interest and there'll be more willingness, I think, to pay for, you know, the careful reuse of components and keeping them in use longer.
Maybe just to add to that even in Europe and even in the Netherlands, where it's quite far advanced when it comes to circularity, yeah, the material passport isn't yet a standard. So, but there is, for example, a foundation. So it would be an outsourced service in that case. The foundation is called Madaster, MADASTER, Madaster Foundation, and they have been involved in pilot projects that were launched by, for example, the city of Amsterdam.
Great, thanks, guys. Yeah, Darisha, just from my side as a sustainability consultant as well, some perspective there. I think I'd like to think that the role of a separate sustainability consultant we should be working ourselves out of a job position, and I think as as an individual in the property sector, as a professional there, these practices should be embedding themselves in-house, and it's a real challenge, I'm sure. But I don't think every project needs to have dedicated sustainability consultants on board for this task. Okay, great. Something from my side, I was wondering, Jeremy and Karin, you mentioned, small enterprises and decent jobs, which I think is extremely important in our context. I'm sure there's a fair amount of entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial spirits on the call today. Are there any glaring gaps that you guys have spotted and you'd be willing to share? What do you think the next big thing is in terms of small business opportunities in the circular economy in the built environment?
I would like to see more material innovation, going back to local materials as well, and to modernize that really. Not only materials, perhaps also design, local design. Yeah, really to find ways of modernizing local designs that maybe for many would have the image of not having been able to get out of poverty. But in the end, I would love to see innovation there, so it's accepted by like a modern, very developed, forward-looking young person, like this desirable lifestyle. That I would like to see more of.
I think just to add, so one of the things Karin and I have been doing, and I think she mentioned this at the beginning, is we've been specifically looking at new opportunities. So we've been running workshops in Gaborone and Windhoek, really on what are the opportunities around the circular economy and new businesses. There are an amazing number of different opportunities. It takes a particular mindset. So once you think through the circular economy approach, you can then start identifying the opportunities. So there's a whole set around reuse of components, avoiding landfill, new materials. There's a whole set around that, looking at agricultural waste, looking at bio-based materials. There's a set really around better construction, less wasteful construction, so better design, designing buildings that last longer, can be maintained more easily, new materials. Then as you look at the different building life cycle stages, so in facilities management and the operation of building, there's a whole set of very interesting opportunities in running buildings far more efficiently, with lower waste. And then the last level is really kind of taking it at an urban level, where you start thinking through circular systems within a neighborhood, within an urban area, and you look at how waste, so for instance, waste from restaurants or a hotel can link in with other local agricultural enterprises. You then get a loop back in terms of soil fertility, fresh produce that then can be used within the local restaurants and hotels, and you can look at rainwater. So there's a whole set of kind of circular processes, economic processes, as well as material flows. I don't know if is Bossa on the call. So one of the examples we looked at in Gaborone was developed up by Bossa, looking particularly at a local shopping center and agricultural potential linked with something like a local mall or a small scale shopping center. So thanks, Francois.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. Yeah, amazing potential. And I think unlocking that and bringing it to market in an accessible, attractive way, commoditized way even, is very exciting. Just a reminder to register for our next webinar. So on that note, here's just a summary of the last webinar there, 30 November for the year, that'll be taking place. We'd be remiss if in 2023 if we didn't use the term AI, I guess. So we have a webinar on the use of AI in the regenerative built environment. Love it or hate it, AI is a big buzzword at the moment and does carry huge potential. So join us for that. Please register on the link in the chat. And then finally, a huge thank you to our speakers, Jeremy Gibberd and Karin Merle. It was a real pleasure chatting to you. And as I said, an incredible framework you've put forward today. We appreciate your time and we look forward to engaging again.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Again, if you would like to sponsor any future webinars, please do get in touch with the RCSA. It's a collaborative effort. It's a non-profit. So we really do appreciate all your input. You can find future webinars and past webinars, LinkedIn, YouTube channel, and subscribing on Eventbrite. Get in touch on the email address there if you have any suggested topics or if you want to get involved in any other way. All right. See you all next month. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers. Bye-bye.